Hello everybody, my name is Ali Reza Parvizi Mosaed. I will present Symboleo specification language that we have developed for legal contract as of 2018. Symboleo is a Greek name, it means agreement. Legal contract is a collection of obligations and powers that represent the intention of parties against each other. An intention of the parties are high-level requirements of any party in business. And also legal contract obligation and power are applied to any business transactions. So parties prefer to sign a contract in a business because they want to refer to court if in case of any violation. Contracts are represented by natural language. We know that natural language is ambiguous. It means any two parties may read a contract and they may interpret the contract differently. Because of the contract ambiguity, the contract clauses may be ambiguous, incomplete, and sometimes inconsistent. And also we are interested to check if the business transactions are compliant with contracts. Because if a party make a mistake, the counterparty may sue for damage. He can refer to court. But we know that manual compliance checking is impossible in some businesses, such as transactive energy or supply chain, because in those businesses we may have lots of contracts, and also in some cases we want to check a contract at real time. This wasn't possible previously, but right now it is possible because IoT technology has improved, and also internet infrastructure is more reliable, and so because of this one it's possible right now. Formal specification language, first of all, provides some solutions for these issues, and also it can help us to analyze a contract at design time, so we can check safety and liveness properties before signing the contract. And also we can generate any executable programs or any models from a specification language. So we can export some programming language codes from a specification language. In this paper, we propose a formal specification language called Symboleo. The basis of our language is an ontology. We have developed this ontology, and the specification language includes syntax and semantics. The syntax provides a prototype for any contracts, and the semantic represent the life cycle of obligations, powers, and contract. We have provided multiple formal axioms to model semantics of contracts. This specification language allows us to analyze contracts and also generate any executable smart contracts from formal specification language. We also have specified a supply chain case study to show that our specification language is applicable. contract is very different from business processes in two ways. First of all, contract is output-oriented process. It only represents the requirement and intention of parties, but it doesn't provide any solution and any approach to achieve that requirement. And also, the contract may include some powers, and a power can manipulate a contract at runtime. It can create some obligation, terminate a contract, or discharge an obligation, or suspend a contract or obligation. So because of this one, because of these two features, contract is different from business processes. We have the Symboleo specification language is based on an ontology. We have interpreted a couple of business contracts, and we have exported important concepts and their relationships. And finally, we have developed a domain ontology, as you see in this picture. And also we were interested to integrate our ontology with uOttawa, because uOttawa provides some generic entities like event, situation, time. So we didn't need to repeat it again. And also the uOttawa is based on Alexis theory, which includes Half-Eldian concept. So we could reuse power and obligation concepts of uOttawa in our domain ontology. As you see in this figure, any contract is a combination of legal position, which can be either power or obligation. A power is a duty of a party against the other party for bringing about a situation. But power is a right of a party, actually creditor, against the counterparty, means debtor, for bringing about a situation. So a power can discharge an obligation, or create an obligation, or suspend an obligation, or terminate a contract. Any legal position is a relationship between debtor and creditor. In case of obligation, debtor has a duty against creditor. In case of power, creditor has a right against debtor. Any legal position is either conditional or unconditional. Antecedent determine if a legal position is conditional or unconditional. For example, in sales of good contract, delivery obligation is conditional because the seller is obliged to deliver the good whenever the buyer pays. So payment is the antecedent of delivery obligation. Consequent is a result of a legal position exertion. In case of power, consequent can be creation of an obligation and something like this. But in case of obligation, consequent can be an action. Can be some events that are result of some actions. For example, in delivery obligation, the seller should finally deliver the good if the buyer pays. So delivered is an event which represent the consequence of delivery obligation. In some cases, we want to instantiate an obligation and power several times. So for this purpose, we use trigger. we can look at an example, an obligation example to understand these concepts. Any obligation is represented by 5 tuple. In the left side, trigger is in the left side, and on the right side we have the signature of the obligation, which includes debtor, creditor, and slang consequent. For example, if payment is violated, then an instance of obligation is created, and then the buyer is obliged to pay extra fee to seller. This obligation is unconditional because antecedent is true. Our language is enough powerful because our ontology includes a concept of event and time. So because of this one, we can do some temporal reasoning and event reasoning on contract. Subcontract is also a new concept, is a new relationship. Any subcontract is a type of the contract. Symboleo, same as other languages, includes syntax and semantic section. In the left side of this slide, you can see the national language of sales of good contract, and in the right side you can see a protocol for this a sample protocol for sales of good contract. The syntax provides a standard protocol for every contract. This protocol includes a domain section. In this section, we can define new types, and any new types is a specialization of ontologist concept. For example, seller is a type is a role, and we know that role is an entity of our ontology. Similarly, for deliver is a type of event, where event is a concept of the ontology. The contract itself has some parameters. These parameters are specified at the execution at the initial step. When we instantiate a contract, we should pass values to the contract. The contract includes declaration, precondition, postcondition, obligation, power, and constraint section. In the declaration, we can define variables that are used in the contract. Precondition and postcondition determine what is necessary before the execution of the contract and what should be at the end of the contract. And the obligation, obligation determine commitment of parties to each other. Surviving obligation survives after the contract termination. And the constraint are some constraint on some restriction on the contract. They can be some safety and liveness properties that should be valid during the execution of the contract. For the semantic of the contract, every obligation, power, and contract has a life cycle that are represented by some state machines. These state machines are related to each other. Some of transitions are explicit, but some others is not visible here. So we have provided 27 formal axioms in order to specify all explicit and implicit transition of these life cycles. For example, here you can see that a contract is formed when the contract is drafted, and then if the contract is signed or its initial time arrives, then the contract goes to in effect, and an effective contract is terminated successfully whenever all of active obligations are fulfilled. We have defined axioms by using 5 primitive predicates that we have proposed, and plus event calculus predicates. For example, for conditional application creation, we can provide this axiom. It says that for all conditional triggered application O of contract C, if O is triggered while C is in effect, then O is created. In this case, we have supposed that A dot and means the antecedent of the O dot and means the antecedent of application O, and the statement, the negation of O dot and equal true, makes sure that the obligation is conditional. Finally, we have provided an Xtext prototype editor. We have defined the syntax of Symboleo in terms of EBNF notations. By this way, we can validate any protocol, any contracts. And also we have provided a prolog based reasoning. This tool can execute some test cases on contract to check correctness of specification, actually axioms, and also contracts. We have provided sales of good sample in these tools, and we have tested it. Thank you.